Right. Good morning. It's nice to see all of you. I recently joined Shazam. It's been about 5 months as Chief Product Officer, and prior to joining Shazam, I was actually working at the BBC in London, heading up BBC iPlayer, which is their kind of online television product, and that was a great job. So a lot of my friends, when I left, said, "What were you thinking? Why would you leave that job? Why would you go to Shazam?" And I had my reasons before I joined, but after I joined, I learned a whole bunch of additional reasons that made me feel good about the decision. So I want to share some of those reasons with you, because I think that it's easy for most of us to think of Shazam as a product that we use to help us recognize the music around us. Show of hands if you've used Shazam to recognize a song. Yeah. And it's almost innocent in that way. It seems like a kind of quaint, innocent product that you use whenever you don't recognize a song around you. But what I realized is just how much bigger and more impactful Shazam is than I had ever actually anticipated. Shazam has 375 million users. It's one of the top 10 apps in the world on mobile phones. And we get over 75 million users using Shazam every single month. At that scale, Shazam drives 10% of all the digital music sales in the world. I didn't know that before I joined, but it made me feel really good about the decision. Now, that music space is a really important space for Shazam, and it's become that successful because essentially it's one button. It's the simplest possible consumer experience. But what we're doing now is translating that experience to a whole new sector for us, which is Shazam for television. So what I'd like to do today is share with you why Shazam has entered into the TV space and how that works. And it's all about our aim to connect consumers with content that they're genuinely interested in. That's something we've done for years in music. People don't tend to Shazam music that they don't like. They Shazam music that they do like. And now we're starting to do that in television with shows and brands in advertisements, trying to bring forward that same simplicity and delightful consumer experience that we've always had, but translate that to a much more complex space in television. And I think we've all probably been going to conferences like this for quite some time and seeing what I can only describe as an obsession with two types of terms: social TV and second screen. Raise your hands if you've come to these conferences and heard about that obsession, heard about people talking about social TV or second screen. We can't get away from it. But actually, I would argue that a user has never in their lives sat in front of their TV and thought, you know what would be great right now is if I could have a second screen experience. I'm not even going to ask for a show of hands on that. That's not something users ask for. And yet, today, users are bombarded with calls to action on television telling them to look at a hashtag or type a web address or install any of many, many apps. And I think that that experience isn't quite right. We haven't quite dialed that in yet. And what I'm hoping is that I can show you today how at Shazam we're trying to build on the simplicity that we've always had to deliver that great consumer experience that users deserve. So the question I'm really asking is, when it comes to second screen, have we been solving a problem that doesn't really exist? Are we trying to create a second screen need that maybe users only have some of the time? Are we trying to force them into a consumer experience that maybe actually doesn't apply to every single TV show? And that's, for me, the question that begins to inform how we create a great consumer experience around those moments where there is genuinely a value proposition for engaging with a show or engaging with an advertisement. And I want to talk a little bit about what I think may be wrong in the world today. Apple was kind enough to share the iPhone X with us, and thankfully it has a lot more space to work with. So that's great news, because if you're a TV viewer, today you're being asked to install an app for every show, an app for every channel, and even on the iPhone X, that's not a great experience. It's just a bit overwhelming, isn't it? Shazam's an app that people already have. So what we're trying to do is connect viewers with an app that they already have and content that they really want without making them jump through hoops of going into an app store, installing yet another app that they may only use for this one show. We also see loads of hashtags, and and URLs on screen. And one thing I know is that my mother is never going to type that web address when she's watching TV. And even if she does, it may not actually get her to the content she was really interested in the first place. There's a lot of hunting. After all, we're all here just to watch TV, right? So I would consider this a bit of a distraction. The hashtag is one of my favorites. Most TV shows and advertisements now have a hashtag on them. And I think that that's really great if you're trying to connect viewers with a conversation. But at Shazam, we're trying to connect viewers with content. And I think there's a really big difference there. So I did an experiment. I went to hashtag Home Depot. I did it because the Home Depot commercial told me to go to hashtag Home Depot. And one thing I found that kind of surprised me is I saw a lot of tweets about people saying, oh, I bought this product and it's not working right and I'm returning it to the store. And I don't think that's what Home Depot had in mind when they put hashtag Home Depot at the end of their advertisement. So that doesn't feel quite like the right experience. So let's talk about what is the right experience. We have a fairly simple formula for second screen. Simplicity. It's got to be a simple experience. It's got to be relevant. It has to get me to the content that I actually care about, not just some random place. And it has to be flexible, because at the end of the day, TV programmers and advertisers are really good at making content. And it's not for us to try to shift them and mold them into our own framework or templates. It's our job to get their users and their viewers and audience to their content as quickly as we possibly can. So I'll show you how we do that. Let's talk about simplicity first. The good news about Shazam is we've kind of got a fairly broad audience. Pretty much the smartphone audience mirrors the Shazam audience almost perfectly. And so as a result, we're trying to make products that are simple enough for anybody to use. I think we've managed to do that with music, and what we want to do is extend that into the world of television. But when you think about the job of getting a user or a viewer to the content they care about when they're watching an advertisement, actually that's not a very easy thing to do at all. You're watching a 30-second commercial, and I think we've all had this experience. Occasionally you see a commercial that you really care about that product, and you try to remind yourself later to go check that out. Does that feel familiar at all? And generally speaking, do you find that the time you remembered that you were supposed to go follow up on that commercial is the next time you see that commercial? And you go, I meant to look that up. But you didn't, because you forgot to. Because it's a lot of work to try to remember to go install that app or go to that hashtag or go to that website. And so then, even when you do follow up, you may not even remember the specific product you were looking for, and so now you're lost. And that doesn't feel quite right. So how do we try to solve that? Well, if you see a commercial or a show, and it's got a Shazam call to action on it, and you Shazam it, you've now launched an app. It's probably an app that's already on the first screen of your phone. And you press one button. Within a few seconds, we connect you directly to that content. We connect you to that show or that commercial. It's mobile optimized, so you're not doing all this stretching and panning of something that was a website that was actually meant for a computer, but you're now trying to render on your phone. So that's a good start, but now we need to make sure that what you see is relevant. It's not just random content. It's not the Home Depot homepage. It's the product you just saw on screen. I'll show you what I mean by that. We did a commercial with Jaguar. Great brand, great content. So you start by watching this commercial. If any of you were Shazamming this right now, it would actually work. So you see that Shazam call to action, and it's telling you to go ahead and Shazam the advertisement. So you do that, and you're getting that Jaguar, and it's not just a random one. It's the very same one, even the same color, right? Because this was a branding campaign, right? They're very focused about creating the right content, both on screen and on your second screen. And now what? So now you've gotten directly to that car that you saw on screen, and you get all kinds of content around it. This isn't trying to squeeze Jaguar into a 140-character limit with a bunch of number signs on it. This is about getting you into that car so that we can get you into a test drive, because test drives lead to purchases. So we were even able to do things like a tour of the car right on the phone. You held up the phone, you could pan around and look inside the car or out. You could even rev the engine. So these are all things that Jaguar was really keen to put in front of their potential customers. That's one example of what I mean by relevant. Here's a Home Depot commercial that was Shazam enabled, and it's about a vertical garden that you can put on a wall Anybody here who wants to do that, Shazam this now so that you can learn how to make one of these vertical wall gardens. Okay, so that's great. So if you Shazam that, you now get to this experience, which takes you into a how-to video precisely for that ad. This isn't the same as hashtag Home Depot, which shows you a bunch of people who wanted to return their products, and it's not the same as www.homedepot.com, which, if you did type it, you'd then have to search for the product you just saw. Because actually, Home Depot had other commercials running at the same time, some for a new line of paint. And if you Shazam that commercial, we didn't take you to the garden, we took you to the paint. Brilliant stuff. Right, so that's what I mean by relevant. We're trying to create a direct connection between what you saw and what you're going to see on that second screen experience. But I also talk about flexibility, because one size definitely does not fit all in this kind of experience. You wouldn't create the very same experience for Home Depot as you would for the commercial for the London 2012 Olympics. We partnered up with NBC to Shazam enable the Olympics in the US. So if you were watching the Olympics, you would continually see these calls to action several times a day, several times in any event, inviting you to Shazam for more information. Now, around the Olympics, there's loads of information you want. You're going to want information like the medal board. You're going to want information about every sport, about all the athletes, about your country that you happen to be interested in. So this is a very different experience from what you might have seen for Home Depot. But of course, the platform supports that kind of flexibility. I'll give you a couple more examples here. One of the ones that I think is most compelling is Red Bull. Red Bull is an incredibly innovative brand, and what they wanted to do was create a companion experience for some amazing content that they had around the Red Bull Supernatural campaign. This one speaks for itself, so I'm going to let you go ahead and watch this video.
Red Bull Supernatural is one of the flagship shows for the series, a one-of-a-kind snowboarding competition between some of the world's best snowboarders. We wanted to create a special second screen experience that would help translate the awesomeness of the event through the eyes of an athlete to the consumer. By working with Shazam, creators of the world's leading media discovery app, a plan was made to create a rich content experience that complemented the action on TV as it unfolded. Using Shazam, there were 4 opportunities during the show for fans to access point-of-view footage on their mobile device from the eyes of 4 of the world's best riders descending down the mountain. You could Shazam with your device to watch that rider's first-person perspective at the same time as the action on the television. Each video was individually unlocked as the show progressed. By Shazam enabling Supernatural, fans experienced and shared dream runs from the best mountain shredders in the world. The results were astounding. 81% watched the POV clip to the end. And so, Red Bull Media House, with the help of Shazam, were able to bring the best of snowboarding to a national TV audience on 2 screens at the same time.
That's pretty cool. So I hope you see that the next time you think about Shazam, you'll still love it for helping you recognize the music around you, but you'll also think about the opportunity for activating audiences around television advertisements and around television shows. We're at a funny time right now. We're all seeing enormous stats around second screen experiences, that 80+% of viewers that watch television are doing it with a second screen. We see enormous numbers around tweets and retweets and likes, and I would argue that many of us would struggle to really know how to place those numbers. What is the value of a tweet or a retweet? What is the value of a follower? But none of us would question the value of an advertiser putting their content in the palm of your hands. That is a very direct kind of number. When you see numbers like you just saw on Red Bull, where 5.9% of the audience that saw the content on television actually Shazammed it and engaged with it, that may not seem like an enormous number. That may not seem like the 60, 70, 80% numbers that we see out there these days. But what it is a very tangible number. These are all people who held your content in their hands. And these are all people who you can then reach back out to. They're a very engaged audience. So for us, that all builds on that formula of simplicity, relevance, and flexibility. And I hope that with that, instead of having debates around social TV or second screen, instead what we're doing is figuring out how to take audiences and connect them with great content in the simplest way possible. Thank you.